One of these days, I'll just get that clicker and impress you all. Megan's up there going, Denise, Denise, Denise. And the thing is that she does that most weeks, and I still don't remember to go and get it. Jesus and politics. Why not? You know, I was talking to someone the other day, and they were reflecting on their teenage years growing up in their family. And they said their family never talked about politics or religion. They were two taboo subjects that everybody avoided. Is that the case in your families growing up? Some yes, some no. This person didn't even know what their parents' political views were because, or how they voted, because it was just never talked about. And I've been thinking about that because there are a lot of people who don't want to talk about politics and don't want to talk about religion either, because bringing up the topic can cause such arguments and division, and it's just easier not to go there. We especially don't want to mix politics and religion, right? Because these two spheres should remain separate and have nothing to do with each other. Religion, it's a personal thing, it's a private thing, it's something just between you and God, and it's something that you keep to yourself. And above all, it's not something that should have anything to do with politics. Well, I want to challenge that idea that politics and religion don't mix, because I think the Gospels challenge those ideas. The climax of all four Gospels is Jesus dying on a cross. Now, we've come to see the symbol of the cross as a symbol of Christianity. And we often overlook the fact that it certainly wasn't a lovely religious symbol that you wear around your neck in the first century when the Gospels were written. You might as well wear a tiny little firing squad around your neck, or maybe an electric chair or something. Yeah? Or a noose, maybe. You should wear a necklace with a noose. How macabre is it to wear a miniature cross, the instrument of the death penalty, as an item of jewellery? It's just weird, but I don't know, we do it. A central message of the Christian faith is that Jesus died for our sins, sure. But the event that lie behind that, the central event of the Gospels, is that the Romans executed Jesus. Jesus didn't just die. We talk about Jesus died for our sins. He didn't just die, he was killed. He was executed as a political dissident. Now, if that's not political, I mean, what is? The Gospels are political. It also raises a very obvious question, but one which often never gets asked. Why on earth would the Romans want to kill Jesus? What was so offensive about Jesus wandering around the countryside telling people that they should be nice to their neighbours? Why would you kill somebody for that? That they should be generous to the poor and that they should forgive others. Why would that get you the death penalty? I mean, why would that prompt the governing authorities to arrest someone? We're not talking about handing them a fine or even putting them behind bars for 2 months or something. How is that the justification for the death penalty? Clearly, the Roman authorities saw Jesus as a threat, or they wouldn't have bothered. The Romans did have a justice system. It might have been brutal, but there was a justice system. I think that at the heart of the conflict between Jesus and the Roman Empire was a conflict over the use of power. You see, the Roman Empire wielded power in one way, and Jesus, the Son of God, wielded power in a very different way. And Jesus' way would have upended the Roman Empire. Leadership by servanthood, power used to care for the poorest and the most vulnerable rather than lining the pockets of the elites. The Roman Empire was only sustainable if the poor stayed poor and stayed dependent on the patronage of the elite. It was only sustainable if everyone gave allegiance to the emperor. And if someone should disturb that status quo, if someone should suggest that there might be a different way to wield power, not with brutality, but with self-sacrifice, not for the benefit of the elite, but for the benefit of the vulnerable, then that's a threat to the empire's way of living. That's a threat to the empire's survival. To suggest that a Roman citizen could give allegiance to another king, well, now you're talking treason. Allegiance belonged to the emperor and no one else. But Jesus comes along and he starts preaching an alternative kingdom. And now we've got a problem. Jesus comes along and he starts asking people to follow him as their king, to give him their allegiance instead of the emperor. And now there's a problem. Jesus starts preaching the very subversive idea that if you have power, you should use it to serve others instead of wielding it to force others into serving you. And suddenly, the foundation of the whole Roman Empire is under threat. What if everybody took these subversive ideas on board? These Christians could turn the whole world upside down. And this is exactly the accusation that was made against the Christians in Thessalonica, I can't say that word, when they persuaded some of the locals to become followers of Jesus, as recorded in Acts 17. We're told, the believers were dragged before the city authorities and accused. These people who have been turning the world upside down have come here also. They are all acting contrary to the decrees of the emperor, saying that there is another king named Jesus. The Gospels are deeply political. Now, I'm not talking about whether they align with one political party or another. That's not what this is about. But ultimately, politics is about power. Who has it and what you do with it in the public sphere. In a democracy, it's about electing leaders and giving them power to use for the common good. So, as Christians living in the shadow of the Roman Empire, there weren't really too many options for calling leaders to account. It's not something you did. You didn't email the emperor criticising his performance, demanding a change in policy. You couldn't vote the emperor out. And lots of Christians today live in very similar circumstances where power is inaccessible to the average person and there are very limited opportunities to protest or to demand change. A lot of our world still lives in that circumstance. But we don't. Australian Christians are not in that place. We can complain about government policy and not be afraid of a knock on the door in the middle of the night. Living in a democracy, we can call our leaders to account. We can and we should. We're citizens of this country. When we see power being wielded in ways that serve the powerful and harm the powerless, we absolutely should call it out. But we should also be aware of the power that we have and be very careful how we wield it. In a few weeks, we're going to be voting for the leaders of our country, for who is going to be in positions of leadership and influence over how this nation is going to be governed. And the outcome of that election will impact the future of the economy, climate action, national security, immigration, Indigenous affairs, education, healthcare, social security, generational welfare, anti-discrimination laws, employment and the workplace, and a whole bunch of other things. And because we live in a democracy, we get the chance to vote and to have our say in who those leaders should be. Well, how is faith involved in that? Like, in what ways does our faith impact our politics? I want to just throw out some challenges today for the way that we vote and for the way that we conduct ourselves in the lead up to the election. So, how does my faith impact my politics? If you've committed yourself to following Jesus, then that commitment impacts all of life, not just what we do here on Sunday nights. And there are multiple ways that our faith might impact our politics. So the first thing is to ask yourself, how does my faith impact my politics? And we'll probably have as many different answers as there are people here. But it's a question that we should ask ourselves. And maybe even better, to ask somebody else, how does your faith impact your politics? That might be a really interesting question to ask. Wow, where did that come from? That comes from my next point. One of the things that we need to do is realise that Jesus does not align perfectly with any political party or ideology, not even close. Now, there are Christians on various positions on the political spectrum who believe that Jesus supports their political ideals, that he would definitely line up with their choice of political party or candidate, either because of personal moral issues or because of societal justice issues. But this is crazy talk. It's crazy talk. Jesus defies political categorisation. He will not sit quietly in the nice, neat political boxes that we want him to get in and stay in. He just won't do it. Jesus is not a Labor supporter. He's not a Liberal. He doesn't support the Greens. He's not a supporter of any of those other minor parties or any particular candidate. He stands outside of all of those boxes and critiques every single one of them. It would be very surprising then if we found that our Christian faith lined up exactly along some kind of party lines. And that means different Christians are going to find themselves disagreeing with other Christians over which might be the best candidate to vote for. And doing so, each person very much guided by their faith. One reason for this is that we can only see from where we sit. Our different experiences, we've got different backgrounds, right? And those different experiences and backgrounds informs the way we think. It informs the way we think about our faith and it informs the way we think about our politics. And the situation is complicated by the reality that many political entities, they've really got very similar goals for our society, right? I mean, no political party would say, we want to see people in poverty. That's not the case. No political party wants that. They want to see people engaged in rewarding and satisfying work and being paid fairly for their time and energy. But they've got different ideas about how they can make that happen. You can support businesses to become successful so that they can afford to employ more people. Or you can advocate for workers. You can advocate for better employment contracts and fairer wages. So it's a complex issue, which is why no one is going to stand up here and tell you how to vote. But something more that I challenge us all to do, and that is to love your neighbour by avoiding unfair assumptions about them based on their political beliefs. There's a thing in psychology called the fundamental attribution error. And by the way, I'll just let you know, I've stolen this idea from an Andy Stanley sermon because he kind of used it and I thought, wow, that actually makes a lot of sense. The fundamental attribution error is an overemphasis on a person's character traits as the reason for their behaviour. So, you go to overtake somebody on the highway when there's a brief overtaking lane because they're driving 5 k's under the speed limit and you don't want to sit behind them. So you go to overtake them. And do you know what they do? They speed up. They speed up and make it difficult for you to pass them. And you think, what a jerk. Like, you selfish git. Like, why do you even have a licence? And then the next day, you're driving along a highway and you notice that a car is passing you. And this prompts you to glance down to your speedo and you go, oh my gosh, I'm doing 5 k's under the speed limit. I didn't even realise I better speed up. You see, we all make the fundamental attribution error, assuming that the reason for someone's behaviour that you see as problematic is a result of their character flaw, not some situation that they might be facing. You assume that the person who arrives late to work, they are lazy and irresponsible. But when you're late to work, you don't think, gee, I'm lazy and irresponsible. You think, wow, the traffic was bad this morning, right? We are prone to making this error when we meet someone with very different political beliefs to us. The reason why she opposes voluntary assisted dying is because she is heartless and driven by ideology instead of compassion. The reason why he is in favour of euthanasia is because he has no moral scruples or respect for the sanctity of life. You only vote for the Greens if you're a woke leftist snowflake. If you vote for a Liberal, you are obviously misogynist and you're only interested in the rich getting richer. All One Nation candidates, all One Nation supporters are racist. And I knew that would happen at some point. Bear with me. All United Australia Party supporters are conspiracy theorists. I've done it. You've done it. We've all done it a lot. And the media, and especially social media, encourages us to do exactly that, to paint people with a brush that only has one colour, instead of seeing that people are complex and have complex reasons for holding the beliefs and the opinions that they do, just as we are. Social media in particular has a vested interest in creating outrage at all other opinions but your own. And if you follow the news, you know about this from October after a Facebook whistleblower went public. Facebook's algorithms are deliberately designed to reward engagement. Clicks and shares are money. And Facebook discovered that the most effective way to drive engagement is outrage. That's what makes you engage on social media. Go have a look at that story back from November. Just, I don't know, click on Facebook algorithms outrage and you'll read the articles on that. When we engage in political discourse on social media using hostile language or insults or outrage, we're being played for fools. We're being manipulated to post destructive, insulting, reactive comments instead of carefully reasoned comments, because the former gives Facebook more profits. If you're going to engage in political discourse, and, let's do it, refuse to bow to the social media overlords who think that they own your soul. Defy them by posting thoughtful, respectful responses, by attacking ideas instead of attacking people. Some ideas need attacking, no doubt. I look at the political discourse of our country and I think, what our country needs now, more than ever, are people who model how to listen to each other, not in order to get ammunition to shoot the other one down, but to understand each other. Because while it might be hard to believe, there are reasons why people have radically different ideas than we do. And I want to refuse to contribute to the polarisation that we see growing more and more in our nation. And what I want to do, I want to love people enough to genuinely understand where they're coming from and why they vote the way they do if they're voting differently from the way I do. And I wonder, could we do that? Could MCC actually become models of what it looks like to put love and respect above politics? I kind of want to give it a go. I don't know if it's possible or not, is it? I want to try it. In medieval scholarship, two people in a debate were first required to explain their opponent's position in the most fair and accurate way possible. So their explanation of their opponent's position had to be affirmed by the opponent. In other words, the opponent had to say, that's fair, that sums up what I believe. So instead of trying your best to rubbish your opponent's argument, you had to do your best to explain the merits of their position before you could then go and challenge their position. Well, I've been thinking about that. And I'm going to try an experiment this week. It might be a dangerous experiment. I don't know what will happen. But today, I called up a friend. I haven't seen this person for a number of years, but they were a friend who showed me a lot of kindness a few years ago. But something they said at some point made me realise, whoa, we have very different political views. Whoa, I was kind of shocked. So I called them up today and I said, hey, I'm doing this sermon tonight about trying to really understand where somebody else is coming from. And I think that you and I have really different political ideas. And so I'm wondering if you would be open to me like dropping around sometime this week for a cuppa. And I just want to ask you about your political views. I'm not trying to persuade you about mine. I just want to understand how you've come to those views. Like, I genuinely want to understand. And she said, yeah, sure, okay. So I'm going over on Tuesday to have this conversation with this person, and I'm going to try and I'm just going to ask questions and try and understand where this person is coming from in order to just gain an understanding of them. I'm not going to offer my political views unless she really asks and really wants to know, sure. But my aim, I'm going with the aim of trying to understand where she's coming from. Somehow or other, I've also ended up going back on Wednesday night because the husband was in the room when I was talking about this, and he's like, oh, I want to be in on this. And so I thought, let's separate the two. And so I'm going back on Wednesday night to try and understand his viewpoint as well. So I don't know what's going to happen. I'm going to post my experience on the MCC General Discussion Slack channel. So, go check it out on Thursday, see if I'm licking my wounds, or I don't know whether I still am friends with this person. Is that something that you might want to do? I mean, I don't want to put it out there because you have to know where you're at, and it's not something that you want to do if you think it's going to make you crazy. You don't want to ruin your friendships. But I don't know, could you just nudge? Could you just dip a toe in the water? Do you have someone that you feel like your friendship's pretty sound, but they've got different ideas, and let's go and explore it and just see what happens? I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. And maybe if you want to, you could post your experiences on that Slack channel, obviously keeping confidentiality and not putting anything terribly inappropriate up there, but you guys know how to do that. So there it is, Jesus and politics. Let's just see what happens.